Okay, so we've got a really interesting set of sources for this deep dive, all kind of circling around this theme of Buddhist philosophy and specifically how it can help us deal with negative thinking, all that stuff that can really weigh us down. So I'm really excited to break this down with you today and hopefully pull out some practical stuff our listeners can actually use. What do you think?
Yeah, absolutely. I think what's so cool about the Buddhist perspective on negativity is that it doesn't treat it like some enemy to be like totally destroyed. It's more about understanding it and learning how to work with it, kind of like training a wild animal or
You're
something.
right, like taming the beast. And
Remember,
speaking of training, some of the stuff you sent over even lays out a kind of 30-day plan, drawing from both ancient wisdom and like modern psychology.
totally. It's like a blend of timeless insights and what we're learning about the mind through science, which is really neat.
Okay, so let's jump into part one. Right off the bat, they hit us with this really powerful image of the mind as a mirror.
Oh yeah, that's a classic one.
So think about it. When a mirror is clean, it reflects things perfectly, right? But when it gets all dusty in here, that dust is like all our negative thoughts, our doubts, fears, anger. Well, our view of reality gets all distorted. We start seeing things through that layer of grime, and we might mistake that for, the actual truth.
It's like looking through smudged glasses, right?
Yeah.
You don't get a clear picture of what's really there.
Exactly. But the really empowering part here is that this mirror isn't like permanently dirty. We can actually clean it.
100%. It's not like it's scratched or something. We have the power to wipe away that dust, to clear our vision.
And that's so important because it means that negativity isn't some fixed part of who we are. It's not set in stone.
Right. It shifts the focus from feeling stuck with negativity to recognizing our ability to actually do something about it.
And there's this great story they tell in part one to illustrate this idea. It's about a young monk who's totally haunted by his shadow. Like everywhere he goes, the shadow is there right behind him. And he starts to feel like it's some kind of bad omen, like it's weighing him down. So he goes to his teacher all stressed out about this shadow that just won't leave him alone. I mean, haven't we all felt that way sometimes? Like negativity is just this constant companion we can't shake.
Yeah, totally. That feeling of being followed by something heavy.
Exactly. So the monk's all worried, and what's really interesting is how the teacher responds. He doesn't tell him to outrun the shadow or fight it. Instead, he points out something really simple but profound. The shadow exists because the monk carries light within him.
Oh, that's so good. No light, no shadow.
Right. It's such a brilliant way to flip the script. Suddenly the shadow isn't the problem, it's actually proof of the light. And doesn't that resonate with our own struggles with negativity? We get so fixated on battling those dark thoughts, but maybe they're just a side effect of something positive, something powerful inside us.
Yeah, like instead of obsessing over the shadow, we should focus on nurturing the light that's creating it. Makes you think, right?
It really does. So another really cool concept they bring up is this idea of the monkey mind.
Oh, I love that one.
Me too. It perfectly captures that restless energy of our thoughts, right? They're always jumping around, never settling down, just like a monkey swinging from branch to branch. And if we're not careful, all that mental chatter can just become a breeding ground for negativity.
It's so true. It's like if you let that monkey run wild, it'll just wreak havoc in your mind.
Totally. But here's the good news. This crazy monkey mind can be tamed.
That's the key, right?
And the first step, according to the source, is awareness. It's about learning to just watch our thoughts come and go without judging them, without getting all tangled up in them. Imagine them as leaves floating down a stream. You just observe them as they drift by. Have you ever tried that? Just watching your thoughts without getting involved.
Oh yeah, all the time. It's a core practice in mindfulness meditation. And what it does is it creates a space between you and your thoughts,
Yeah.
It helps you realize you're not your thoughts. They're just like events happening in your mind.
That's so key, because it means that just because a thought pops up I'm not good enough, it doesn't automatically make it true. It's just a temporary visitor in your mind, like a cloud passing through the sky.
Yeah, it's super helpful to remember that thoughts are impermanent. They come and go.
Right, and once you see that, it takes away some of their power. Okay, so then the source dives into this really interesting psychological concept called negativity bias. Basically, it's the idea that our brains are kind of hardwired to pay more attention to negative stuff, probably because, way back in the day, it was helpful for survival, to focus on threats and dangers.
It's like our brains are still stuck in caveman mode sometimes.
Yeah, totally. But the downside is that it makes us tend to blow things out of proportion, like dwelling on the one negative comment instead of all the positive ones.
And that can really fuel those negative thought spirals, even when objectively things are going pretty well.
So frustrating. But the good news is the source offers a really simple technique to counter this negativity bias. Journaling 3 positive things at the end of each day. It's like consciously training your brain to notice the good stuff, to rebalance the scales a bit.
It's a great practice. It's like instead of letting your mind automatically gravitate toward what went wrong, you're actively looking for what went right.
And that can make a huge difference in how we feel overall.
For sure. It's a powerful way to shift your perspective.
Okay, so building on that, they introduce another key Buddhist practice: gratitude. The idea here is that instead of constantly focusing on what we lack, we start to appreciate what we already have. And this can be so simple, like noticing the beauty of a sunset or savoring a delicious meal. What are some small things you find yourself grateful for regularly?
Oh, so many things. Like my morning coffee, a good conversation with a friend, even just the feeling of sunshine on my skin.
It's so true. And those little moments of appreciation can really add up, right? They help us shift from a mindset of scarcity to one of abundance. And that can make a big difference in how we experience the world.
It's like training yourself to see the fullness of life, even in the simple things.
I love that.
Yeah.
So part 1 wraps up with this really thought-provoking question. What would happen if, for the next 30 days, we committed to simply observing our thoughts without judgment and actively nurturing that inner light instead of getting so caught up in the shadows? It's like a little challenge, right? To see what might change if we shift our focus in this way.
I like it. It's like an invitation to experiment, to see what happens when we put these ideas into practice.
Right. Okay, so now we're moving into part 2, and this is where things get a little bit more complex, I guess you could say. We encounter this big concept of emptiness, or shunyata in Sanskrit. And I know that word can sound a little intimidating, maybe even kind of bleak.
Yeah, it could be a bit heady at first.
But the source makes it clear that this doesn't mean that everything is meaningless or that we should all just feel empty inside. Not at all. Instead, it's about understanding this, like, deep interconnectedness of all things and the idea that nothing truly exists independently on its own. And that applies not just to, like, objects in the world, but also to our thoughts and emotions.
Right. And I think a really important point here is that when we say something is empty in this sense, it doesn't mean it's not real. It's more about recognizing that things, including our thoughts, don't have this fixed, unchanging essence. They're kind of fluid, constantly changing, dependent on all these different conditions.
So when we say that negative thoughts are empty, it doesn't mean they're not real experiences, right? We all feel those negative thoughts. But what it does mean is that they don't have some kind of independent power source. They need us, our attention and energy, to really take hold.
Yeah, it's like they're borrowing their power from us. And once we see that, it can be really empowering because it means we have more control than we might realize.
And this leads into a really practical point. If we stop feeding those negative thoughts with our attention, they'll eventually just kind of dissolve on their own, like those dusty clouds you talked about earlier.
Exactly. It's like if you ignore a fire, it eventually runs out of fuel and goes out.
And to help us with this, part 2 gives us this really helpful exercise called labeling thoughts. So the idea is, whenever a negative thought pops up, we just silently label it in our minds, like, this is just a thought about failure, or this is just a thought about not being good enough.
It's like creating a little distance, right? You're not immediately buying into the thought, you're just observing it.
And the simple act of labeling can really take away some of its sting.
It's a form of mindfulness, basically. It's about bringing awareness to the present moment and recognizing that those thoughts are just mental events, not necessarily facts.
To really drive home this point about how negativity often thrives on our resistance, they tell this really insightful Zen story about a farmer who's being plagued by crows eating his crops. He tries everything to get rid of them, shouting, chasing, scarecrows, you name it. But the more he fights them, the worse it gets.
Oh, I know that feeling. It's like when you try to force a thought out of your head and it just comes back even stronger.
Right. And the story goes on to say that finally, the farmer seeks advice from a wise monk who tells him to stop resisting and instead offer the crows some seeds at the edge of the field. It's like instead of fighting them, he's redirecting their energy.
So clever. It's like that saying, what you resist persists.
Exactly. And that's such a powerful lesson for dealing with negativity, isn't it? The more we try to suppress or push away those negative thoughts, the stronger they often seem to become. But when we learn to acknowledge them without getting all hooked by them and maybe even gently redirect our focus, they start to lose their power over us.
It's a shift from battling to, like, befriending in a way.
That's a great way to put it. Okay, so building on all this, part 2 lays out this really practical 5-step guide for a 30-day journey of working with negativity. Are you ready for this?
Hit me with it.
Okay, so step 1 is observe without judgment. They suggest picturing those negative thoughts like clouds just drifting by in the sky of your mind.
Love that imagery. It reminds us that thoughts are transient, they come and go, just like weather patterns.
Right, we don't have to get all caught up in them. Step 2 is to redirect your focus. And this is very much like the farmer in the story, right? Instead of wasting all our energy fighting the crows, we intentionally put our attention on positive activities, things that make us feel good.
It's like filling your mental garden with beautiful flowers instead of weeds.
Exactly. So step 3 is practice loving kindness meditation, which is often called metta. This is all about actively cultivating feelings of goodwill, warmth, and compassion, starting with ourselves and then expanding outwards to others. And they mentioned that studies have shown that this practice can really reduce stress and boost empathy.
Yeah, metta is incredibly powerful. It's like sending out positive vibes into the world, and it can really shift your whole energy.
Absolutely. Okay, step 4 is to embrace imperfection. And this draws on the beautiful Japanese concept of wabi-sabi, which is all about appreciating the beauty in things that are imperfect, impermanent, and incomplete.
It's a beautiful way to look at things. It takes the pressure off of always striving for perfection, which is, like, totally unattainable anyway.
It's so freeing, right? And the 5th and final step in this part is to cultivate equanimity, which is often referred to as upekkha. This is about developing that inner stability and calmness that allows us to remain balanced and grounded, even when life throws us curveballs. And they suggest that reflecting on the impermanence of everything can be a really helpful way to cultivate this quality.
It's like that idea of this too shall pass, right?
Yeah.
Recognizing that nothing lasts forever, both the good and the bad, can help us ride the waves of life with a bit more grace and ease.
It's about finding that inner peace that isn't dependent on everything being perfect all the time. Now, one of the coolest things about this part is how they connect these ancient practices to modern science, specifically the field of neuroplasticity. You know, the idea that our brains are not fixed, but can actually rewire themselves through experience. They mention studies that have shown how things like mindfulness and compassion training can actually lead to measurable changes in the brain, particularly in areas associated with things like memory, empathy, and stress regulation.
I find that so fascinating. It's like we can literally rewire our brains for happiness and well-being.
Isn't that amazing? And it really underscores how powerful these practices can be, that they're not just like fluffy feel-good stuff, but they actually have real, tangible effects on our brains and bodies.
Yeah, it takes it out of the realm of just philosophy and into the realm of, like, hard science, which I think is really cool.
Totally. But they also emphasize that transformation takes time, patience, and consistency. They compare it to a sculptor patiently chipping away at a block of stone to reveal the masterpiece within.
Which is a great analogy. It reminds us that, it's a process, not a quick fix.
Right. So we need to be patient with ourselves and trust that with consistent effort, those negative patterns will gradually weaken and our inner light will shine brighter and brighter.
I love that.
And part 2 ends with this really powerful reminder. Negativity can't truly thrive in the presence of sustained awareness. It's like when we shine the light of our attention on it, those shadows start to fade away.
And ultimately, that's where real inner peace comes from, right? Aligning with our truest selves, free from the distortions that negative thinking creates.
Okay, so we're on to part 3 now, and this is where things take a really interesting and maybe unexpected turn. They actually suggest that negativity might not always be the enemy, that it could actually serve as our greatest teacher and even be seen as poison as medicine. What do you think about that?
Yeah, it's definitely a thought-provoking idea. And I think it speaks to a more nuanced understanding of how suffering can function in our lives, not just as something to be avoided, but as something that can potentially lead to growth and wisdom.
Right. And they bring in the first noble truth of Buddhism, which is the recognition that suffering, or dukkha, is a fundamental part of life. But then they immediately connect this to the second noble truth, which is that our clinging and attachment to things being a certain way is often the root cause of this suffering.
Like, the more we resist reality, the more we suffer.
Exactly. But then comes this really cool paradox. that the experience of suffering itself can be a powerful wake-up call, a catalyst for genuine change. They use the metaphor of the lotus flower, which grows and blossoms in muddy water, but ultimately rises above it to reveal its stunning beauty.
That's such a beautiful image, right? It reminds us that even out of the muck and mire, something beautiful could emerge.
It's like sometimes we need to go through the mud to appreciate the lotus.
Yeah.
And they encourage us to look at our own recurring negative patterns, those things that keep tripping us up, and to see them not just as obstacles, but as potential signals pointing towards areas where we might need to do some inner work.
Yeah, it's like instead of just trying to get rid of those negative patterns, we can ask ourselves, what are they trying to teach me? What can I learn from them?
And then they introduce the concept of self-compassion, which is such an important part of this whole process. It's about learning to meet those difficult emotions and experiences, not with harsh self-criticism, but with kindness, understanding, and acceptance.
Self-compassion is so crucial. Because often when we're struggling, the last thing we need is to beat ourselves up even more. It just adds fuel to the fire.
So true. They even share a simple self-compassion exercise that involves taking a few deep breaths, acknowledging the pain or difficulty we're experiencing, maybe placing a hand on our heart, and then repeating some kind and reassuring phrases to ourselves.
It sounds so simple, but those little acts of self-kindness can be so powerful.
They really can. Okay, then they talk about the Buddhist practice of acceptance, and they're very clear that this doesn't mean giving up or resigning ourselves to negativity. It's more about fully and honestly acknowledging reality as it is, even the parts that are unpleasant, and choosing to engage with that reality from a place of clarity and wisdom rather than resistance and denial.
It's about, making peace with what is so we can move forward from a more empowered place.
And they tell this wonderful story about a monk who's walking through a busy marketplace and someone bumps into him and is really rude. But instead of getting angry or upset, the monk simply smiles and says, "May you be well." And it's such a beautiful illustration of how, through acceptance, even challenging interactions can become opportunities for growth and compassion.
It's like he's choosing to respond with kindness, even when it's not easy.
Hmm.
That's real strength right there.
Yeah, so powerful. Okay, so part 3 wraps up with this really comprehensive blueprint for transformation, a 30-day plan, which incorporates all these key concepts and practices. It includes things like morning reflection, mindful observation, gratitude journaling, loving kindness meditation, and a weekly review to check in with ourselves and see how we're doing.
It's like a whole toolkit for cultivating more peace and positivity in our lives.
Right. And it really highlights that this is a journey, not a destination.
Exactly. It takes time, patience, and commitment.
They also talk about this beautiful idea of the ripple effect, which is the idea that our own inner transformation can actually have a positive impact on those around us. Like when we become more peaceful and centered, it naturally radiates outwards, influencing our relationships and interactions.
That's what's so amazing about these practices. They don't just benefit us individually, but they can actually create a ripple effect of positivity that extends outwards to touch everyone around us.
That's a beautiful thought, isn't it? And the source ends with this really powerful and hopeful question. What if negativity, rather than being a constant obstacle to our happiness, could actually be a stepping stone that helps us to become stronger, wiser, and more compassionate human beings? It's like flipping the script completely, right?
I love it. It's like saying, what if those difficult experiences, those moments of darkness, are actually the seeds of something beautiful and transformative?
It's about trusting that even amidst the challenges, there's a path towards greater peace, fulfillment, and genuine well-being. And I think that's a really beautiful note to end on. So I hope this deep dive into Buddhist philosophy and the art of navigating negative thinking has given our listeners not just a deeper understanding, but also some practical tools and a renewed sense of hope. Because ultimately, it's about recognizing that we all have that inner light. And with practice and patience, we can learn to let it shine brighter and brighter, illuminating not only our own lives, but the lives of everyone around us.